So far, except the Krug system, only the SAMs of the PVO, the Soviet Homeland Air Defense, had been presented on this channel. Contrary to the PVO SAMs, which for the most part protect the static installations, Army Air Defense System protect moving forces, which require equipment with similar mobility requirements. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union put a higher emphasis on Army Air Defense weapons than the Western Bloc, and due to their exports, they had far more chances to provide their capabilities in combat. For this reason, the Army Air Defense topic is presented through the structure of the Soviet Army Air Defense. It provides the framework that helps understand other countries' Army Air Defense forces. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union has developed a wide array Army Air Defense system, which differed widely in operational level, size, guidance type, and many important features. From very small man-portable anti-aircraft missiles, commonly known as manpads, up to the types that used up to a 2.5-ton category missiles and many kinds of anti-aircraft guns. The legacy of the system developed during the Cold War carry on to this day, but what exactly were they? Anti-aircraft artillery fielded a wide range of calibers, the smallest of which were machine guns developed for the purpose, and the calibers of anti-aircraft guns range between 12.8mm up to 130mm before the era of the guided missile SAMs. The classification of surface-to-air missile systems were the following. The manpads, in order their introduction, is the Strela 2, Strela 3, followed by the Igla 1, then the Igla, with their NATO codenames SA-7, 14, 16 and 18. Short-range self-propelled systems equipped with electro-optical or infrared guided missiles were represented by the Strela 1, then followed by the Strela 10 with their NATO codenames SA-9 and SA-13. In the group of short-range radar-guided SAMs were possibly the most widely known SAMs of the Cold War, the Kub with NATO code SA-6, along with the Osa family, its NATO code SA-8. The category of medium SAMs were represented by the Krug and its successor the S-300V1 Anti-300 and Buk M1. These were the SA-4, SA-12A and SA-11 respectively. However, in the early 60s the S-75M Volkov was used for Army Air Defense despite all of shortcomings in mobility, because there was no other option at the time. The sole representative of the long range, the 75 km plus range radar-guided SAMs, was the S-300V Ante with NATO code SA-12B. It has to be noted that the Tor, NATO code SA-15, and the Tunguska, NATO code SA-19, were developed during Cold War, but the real mass-produced variants, the Tor M1 and the 2K-22M, were fielded only after the fall of the Soviet Union. The detailed technical presentation of the listed air defense systems is a topic for another time, except the 2K-11 Krug, which had been already presented in detail. Furthermore, the current video focuses on the first-line units, starting from the early 70s, when the SAM systems became widely used in the first echelon Soviet units in Europe. For understanding the structure and organization of an army air defense, firstly we need to get into the whole structure of the army. However, this video is not a comprehensive guide of different armies, and we keep the explanation at the level where the size and capabilities of the supporting air defense be clearly understood. The goal is to understand whether there is only a shoulder-launched missile for every 50 or 500 combat soldiers, to see the ratio between the combat and support air defense units of a regiment, a division or an army. Basically, the armies are structured around the combat units, which can be different kind of infantry and armored units. Let's start the explanation with the organization of a mechanized infantry battalion, regiment and division, and finally the army, as everything were built around them. Following the understanding of their structure, we can get a good picture about the quantity and capability of various air defense forces allocated for their protection. Combat units have a rational minimal size, as you wouldn't see a lone infantryman or tank wandering on the field alone, neither would an air defense vehicle move without a clear object in mind. The conception behind combined arms means that even a battalion-sized unit has weaponry to engage any kind target it might encounter within certain limits, land or air vehicle, it does not matter. An infantry battalion, besides the usual rifleman weaponry, rifle, machine guns, etc., has anti-aircraft and anti-armor equipment. With that in mind, let's see the structure of a typical Soviet mechanized infantry regiment at the end of 70s and early 80s. The smallest fighting unit of a mechanized infantry regiment is the squad. The number of soldiers in a squad is usually tied to the capacity of the carrier vehicle it uses. From the beginning of the 60s, the BTR family of combat vehicles were the backbone of the Armored Personnel Carrier Fleet, in short APC, for the mechanized infantry forces. There have been 3 generations of the vehicle through the Cold War, the BTR 60, 70 and 80. From the second half of the 60s, the BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicle, in short IFV, has appeared along with its later variant, the BMP-2, around the early 80s. So, the typical size of an infantry squad was around 8 to 11 soldiers. On the images we can see 2 examples of a squad, one from the Cold War from East Germany, the another one from present day from the Hungarian army. The operating personnel of the vehicle is also member of the infantry platoon, as they provide fire support. The weaponry of an infantry platoon is consisted of handheld weapons like pistols, assault rifles, machine gun, sniper rifles and RPG anti-tank weapons, and armament of the given vehicle itself. That can be anything between automatic weapons, a smoothbore cannon, or anti-tank missile launcher. More about the differences of APCs and IFVs in the extra content. Now let's see the structure from the bottom level. 3 infantry squads make a platoon. Therefore 3 APC or IFV vehicles from the listed BTR or BMP options. 3 infantry platoons, so 3 by 3, in total 9 vehicles make a company with an additional command vehicle, so in total 10 armored vehicles make a mechanized infantry company. On top of that, an extra squad is added to the infantry company, armed with anti-tank guided missiles and machine guns, which is distributed between the 3 platoons. 3 infantry companies make an infantry battalion with 2 additional vehicles, one for the battalion command, the other for the staff command. That makes a total of 32 vehicles. The battalion could get a dedicated anti-tank platoon armed with either guided missile launchers or recoilless guns. With them, the battalion has about a total of 40 APC or IFV vehicles. The next, one level higher in the structure, is the mechanized infantry regiment, which consists of 3 infantry and 1 tank battalion. This tank battalion consists of 4 tank companies, with 3 tank platoons per company, each with 3 tanks. With the company commander's vehicle, the total number of tanks in the tank company is 10. The infantry regiment could have an anti-tank battery, as an addition equipped with 3x3 vehicles with various armor-piercing missiles. Through the years there have been countless combinations of armaments and platforms. An example of such is the BRDM-2, which had many sub-variants with different kinds of anti-tank missiles. The regiment, besides the listed combat units, had a reconnaissance company, which included 10 more vehicles, similar to an infantry company. These listed units form the core of a mechanized infantry regiment, which conducts reconnaissance and engages in direct combat with enemy forces. The number and crew of these vehicles can be roughly taken as a reference as the protected force by the air defense up to a regiment level. However, combat forces do not exist in vacuum, they have combat and non-combat support elements. Combat support elements are, for example, the artillery and air defense units. One of the support units provides protection for fighting units, the other provides additional firepower, but none of them is suitable to size and hold an area, but they can be essential to help achieving this goal. Similarly to the combat units, the combat support units have different sizes depending on their equipment and organizational level. Even a mechanized infantry company had a dedicated combat support element. A battalion had a dedicated 120mm mortar battery, but the companies themselves had mortar support platoon equipped with 82mm mortars. On the regiment level, the fire support unit was a battalion equipped with 122mm howitzers, providing far superior range and firepower, along with a battery of multiple launch rocket system. These units meant an additional 1 or 2 dozen vehicles, depending on the organizational level. There are non-combat support units which are not participating in combat. A few examples of these: the signal, engineering, medical and logistical units, besides many others. These are not presented here. Let's be satisfied with the knowledge that as the level and size of the combat unit is higher, the type and sizes of the support unit also increase, but the support unit is always smaller. For example, a mechanized infantry regiment has an artillery battalion, and a mechanized infantry division has an artillery regiment or an air defense regiment. About the types, for example, at infantry platoon or company level there was no medical unit, while a division had a dedicated medical battalion with such a personnel and equipment which could be compared to a small hospital. According to the organizational structure presented so far, in peacetime, a mechanized infantry regiment consists of 4 combat battalions, 3 mechanized infantry battalions and 1 tank battalion. However, since World War II, it has been a fundamental principle that tanks and infantry move and fight together, as neither can reach their full combat potential without the other. Additionally, in certain environments, tanks without infantry support became easy prey. The organizational diagram does not explain how this issue was handled. The 3 companies of a tank battalion are divided and allocated to the mechanized infantry battalions, while 1 tank company was held in reserve. This way, each mechanized infantry battalion was supported by a tank company. These tanks could provide fire support to the infantry and could be the primary but not exclusive means of countering enemy tanks. Now that we have become familiar with the structure and size of a mechanized infantry regiment, let's step up to the higher levels. At first step, let's see the structure of a typical mechanized infantry division. 3 mechanized infantry and a single tank regiment were the core of the mechanized infantry division. From the 3 infantry regiments, 1 was equipped with BMP infantry fighting vehicles, the 2 others with B-tier armored personnel carriers. A single regiment was equipped with the same type of BMP or B-tier vehicles. The dedicated tank regiment of a mechanized infantry division had 3 tank battalions, all of which equipped solely with tanks. A mechanized infantry army had 4 infantry divisions and 1 tank division. The structure of a tank division is presented in the extra content. As usual, divisions and armies had their own combat support and non-combat support units, which were not allocated and not part of any infantry or tank regiment or division. These formed the reserve on division and army level, providing a degree of operational flexibility along with their fundamental duties of fire support, air defense, etc. It is also important to understand the differences between peace and wartime organizations. During peacetime, an army consisted of 3-5 corpses or 2-3 divisions, which secured the national borders. However, during wartime, a Soviet-style army was composed of 5 divisions and an army group, as the Soviet terminology called front, of 2 or 3 armies, depending on the importance of the strategic direction. A typical army group had 2 armies, consisted of 10 divisions and 1 more reserve tank division on an army altogether. On the image we can see such an idealized army group. Some words about the front as organization level term. It has nothing to do with the term of front line. Compared to the structure and organization of other armed forces, the Soviet front is a rough equivalent to an army group. For example, Poland had no land connection to any NATO countries at the time, but there was a Polish front, which meant the sum of divisions and armies stationed there. Using as a specific example as Hungary, the logic is more understandable. The following units were stationed in Hungary in the middle 80s. The Hungarian People's Army consisted of 5 mechanized infantry divisions and a single tank division. The 5th Army of the Hungarian People's Army consisted of the 7th, 8th and 9th mechanized infantry divisions along with the 11th tank division. These were stationed in Kiskunfelegyháza, Zalaegerszeg, Kaposvár and Tata respectively. The 3rd Corps of the Hungarian People's Army consisted of the 4th and 5th Mechanized Infantry Divisions, with the former stationed in Gyöngyös and the latter in Nyíregyháza. The Southern Army Group of the Soviet Union with 2 tank and 2 mechanized infantry divisions were stationed in Hungary. The 13th and 19th tank divisions were stationed in Szentkirályszabadja and Esztergom, the 284th and the 93rd Mechanized Infantry Division in Székesfehérvár and Kecskemét. Along the Subcarpathian side of the Soviet-Hungarian border, in Munkács was stationed the 128th Guard Infantry Division, in time of peace with the 38th Corps, while in wartime they would have been reallocated to the Danube Front. From these units, the Danube Front or Army Group would have consisted of 2 armies and 1 reserve tank division, making a total of 2 by 5 plus 1, in total 11 divisions. Most likely, the reserve tank division was stationed in Szentkirályszabadja. It was the first withdrawn unit when the Soviet troops left Hungary. The front, formed in East Germany, would have consisted of 3 armies, with 2 mechanized infantry and a single tank army. The presented unit composition of an army group means that examining the military forces of the Soviet and Warsaw Pact member countries in an isolation is quite meaningless. In case of war, this would have been combined into a jointly led armies. A purely Soviet army consisting only Soviet divisions could theoretically have existed in Eastern Europe, but it is difficult to say how common or realistic this would have been in the 2 strategic directions in Europe. It seems unlikely. However, in the military districts of the Soviet Union that bordered non-NATO member states, there would have been armies consisting purely of Soviet units, for example in the Caucasus and in areas bordering China. This disrupts the idealized organizational structure, not only regarding the air defense units, but also in overall military capabilities of the Warsaw Pact. In the Warsaw Pact member states, the divisions were often lacked the nominal quantity of equipment and manpower, so the air defense of an army group would have not been uniform in quantity or quality. The combat units also would not have been identical to the Soviet. This topic presented with a bit more detail in the extra content. To understand the structure of air defense, the quantity and qualitative layering, the pace of transition between the older and latest equipment must be considered. Even within a battalion, regiment or division, some units still use equipment from an earlier generation. Therefore, it is possible that one mechanized infantry regiment of a division had already received, for example, the Igla pads, while the others were still using the older Strela 2 or Strela 3. The quality of the equipment across the Warsaw Pact countries showed strong deviations from each other. Soviet divisions always received the most modern equipment, earlier than any non-Soviet Warsaw Pact member countries, even up to 5 or 10 years earlier. Moreover, the export of some equipment never happened, not even within the Warsaw Pact. For example, neither the T-68 nor the T-80 tank family was exported in any variants during the Cold War. Their exclusive user was the Soviet Union. An example of the qualitative lag is that while Soviet forces had already replaced the Strela 2 manpad with Igla or Igla 1 types, the Strela 2 was still considered widespread in the Hungarian People's Army and in other Warsaw Pact member countries even in the late 80s. Even amongst the individual Warsaw Pact countries there were serious deviations. Some never acquired some same type or only in a very small quantity. This deviation will be listed to each presented army air defense system later. Similarly to the SAMs of the PVO, the Homeland Air Defense, army air defense units are composed much more than just self-propelled vehicles. They have launchers and radar systems, they have their own support elements including missile reload vehicles, various logistical trucks along with communication and control vehicles. However, for understanding the structure and firepower, these have less importance, therefore they are not displayed and discussed here. The air defense units and the equipment on different organization level were the following. A mechanized infantry battalion accompanied an air defense platoon, which consisted of 3 infantry squad, each with 3 launchers, so in total 9 manpads. The exact model of the manpad could have been the Strela 2, Strela 3, Igla 1 or Igla, depending on the date and the unit. Each mechanized infantry regiment had 2 air defense batteries. One was equipped with the Ju-23 self-propelled AAA, the other with SAMs. The SAM battery could have been either Strela 1 or Strela 10, each with 4 launchers and a command and communication vehicle. The latter was the PU-12, which was based on a BTR-60 chassis capable of communicating with higher level automated radar and command systems. It was capable of receiving target coordinates through data link from higher level radars from the structure and organization. The AAA battery had 4 Shilka vehicles and a command and communication vehicle. This was the peacetime structure. In wartime organization, the Strela and Shilka vehicles would have been distributed between the 2 attacking mechanized infantry battalions, having 1 pair of AAA and 1 pair of Strela vehicles. The reserve infantry battalion did not have any of them. For each regiment command, an additional 3 manpads were allocated from the listed types depending on the unit and date. From 1990, the 1st echelon unit started to be rearmed with the first 2 K22M Tunguska batteries. This replaced the AAA and the IR Sharatzen batteries, however only with 6 vehicles instead of the 4+4 Shilkas and Strelas. This transition happened only after the fall of the Soviet Union. A SAM regiment was allocated for a mechanized infantry division, which could have been equipped with KUB or OSA. The original plan was providing only OSA regiments to mechanized infantry divisions, but because of the delayed development of the OSA, the reality strongly deviated from the plans. An OSA regiment has 5 batteries, each with 4 self-propelled vehicles. Each OSA vehicle has a single target channel and 6 ready-to-fire missiles, considering the AK and AKM variants. In total, an OSA regiment had 20 target channels. KUB regiments originally intended to be the air defense of tank divisions. A single KUB regiment consisting of 5 air defense batteries. Each battery has 1 SURM vehicle which consists both the target acquisition and the fire control radar with a single target channel. The KUB battery has 4 transport air erector launcher platforms, each with 3 missiles. The regiment in total had 5 target channels. The batteries and the tactical company were also equipped with 3 manpad launchers. So far so good, but how the OSA vehicles would have been employed? Yes, you guessed right, they were also distributed among the regiments. In an idealized infantry division, all the 4 fighting regiments would have been protected by an OSA battery. The 4 vehicles of an OSA battery would have been allocated to the first line battalions, just as the case with the Shilka AAA and the Strela SAMs. The reserve battalion did not have OSA. However, an OSA regiment consisted of 5 batteries, so 1 battery is still up for tasking. That could act as a reserve, or it could be allocated to protect the division headquarters, the rocket artillery or any other important asset, or maybe the recon company also could get them. That was the decision of the division commander. The division headquarters, so in a sense the division itself, had an additional 6 manpad launchers. This was the plan, but what was the reality? Thanks to the long and delayed development of the OSA by about a decade, among the Warsaw Pact, many mechanized infantry divisions were armed with KUB regiments. This was a heavy financial burden, especially because a KUB regiment could only provide a quarter of the target channels compared to an OSA air defense regiment. With the arrival of OSA, the air defense regiments were rearmed in the Soviet Union, but this did not happen universally across the Warsaw Pact. For example, Hungary never acquired any OSA vehicle. The KUB and OSA were both replaced by the Tor M1 with NATO code SA-15, despite its engagement zone being considerably smaller than the KUBs, and it was never amphibious like the OSA. Very much like the Tunguska, the Tor M1 is a post-Cold War system. Not even first echelon units in East Germany received them before the collapse of the Soviet Union. The army-level air defense unit was a brigade or regiment what was assigned to an army. Countries with limited financial expenditures had the latter a smaller size unit. Up until the mid-80s, this was a Krug brigade, then the Book M1 started to replace it. At the time, Hungary was considered a secondary front, so the rearmament of the Soviet forces stationed there only happened after the ones in East Germany only in 1989. In East Germany, the first Book M units appeared in the second half of the 80s. On front level, we can say to an army group, an air defense brigade provided the coverage. Up until the end of the Cold War, this was identical in organization to an army-level Krug brigade. From 1988 onwards, the Krug brigade started to be replaced with fully operational S-300V units. Although up until 1987 only S-300V1 was available. The V1 variant had only limited anti-ballistic missile capabilities compared to the fully operational V variant. Until the end of the Cold War, only 3 Krug brigades had been rearmed with S-300V and only 1 Soviet brigade in East Germany. Regarding the army-level SAM units all across the Warsaw Pact. The Hungarian People's Army did not have front-level air defense, which was provided by the Soviet for the Danube front. In the last decade of the Cold War, Czechoslovakia had 2 armies and provided its own front-level air defense, not relying on the Soviet Union. In very short, this was the idealized organization of the Soviet Army air defense and organizational levels of the army in the SAM era from the early 70s. Each mentioned SAM and replay systems will be presented in follow-on videos, the 2K11 Krug, which is already available on the channel. If you like the video, you can share, like, subscribe or ring the bell and follow the channel. You can support it via Patreon or YouTube channel membership for exchange for early access, voting on planned topics, extra content and updates about the project. So far, 15 extra content had been released, their description are the link under the video.